Greg Shantz corrects us from last month. Dave must have forgotten that he had read a review of Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus in the National Post back in 2016 and had written about it in a comment on this very blog, which later became this post. Yeah, I had completely forgotten this. I think I will read it aloud. I got a prayer time coming up at 7:00, but for the sake of all of the time and energy that Chester put into the book, the very least we can do 8 years later is do a major revisit on it. There was a full-page article / review of Chester's new book, Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus, in the National Post that I was going to make reference to at some point at the end of the first column, of which David Berry announced that Chester is the only person to do religious commentary in a comic book. But then I just thought, why bother? I already know how the discussion is going to go on Amok, Chester Brown Good, Dave Sim Evil, as opposed to the tenor of the article. Chester Brown Good, Dave Sim not existent. I have to interrupt at this point and go, that seems like all the way back to my childhood relative to how quickly newspapers are getting thinner and thinner and thinner. The National Post occasionally runs a review of a book in the newspaper, but very, very rarely. And usually it takes up all of the arts and life section now. At this time, there was at least, I would say, 5 or 6 pages in the arts and life section of the National Post devoted to book reviews. Yes, I do think that demonic possession exists and that it's the same as it's been since biblical times. We've just decided to call it by other names. It's particularly noticeable for someone like myself who prays 5 times a day, reads scripture aloud, and fasts most days, and 24 hours on Sunday. For me, that's just basic self-protection. It's pretty apparent what a complete lack of self-protection looks like. I definitely don't look at people who don't protect themselves and go, wow, they're so carefree and happy. I must be seriously deluded, unquote. This was more of a sore point at the time, so I'm gonna add that and then get back to reading here. There comes a point where you just accept that you're not getting a fair hearing, and that you won't get a fair hearing in a world where a major cartooning presence like Chester Brown is basically saying that Jesus agrees with him that prostitution is a good thing. Canada has certainly opted for Chester Brown's view of prostitution that isn't considered misogynistic or anything pejorative. I think 2 things worth pointing out. One, Chester, according to Joe Matt, mischaracterized Joe's disapproval of Chester's whoremongering as, quote, Joe is too cheap to pay for a prostitute, unquote. That may be true, but in all of the conversations that Joe and Chester and I had, Joe's objections were always on moral grounds. At least that's what he was saying. Chester is conjecturing about a different awareness from Joe's portrayal of his views. Chester did the same thing with me, mischaracterizing my disapproval as being, quote, Dave doesn't believe that women should have jobs, unquote. I did. And yeah, I think I would definitely lead on this one as much as I meant this back in 2016. I definitely mean it now. I definitely don't believe that 86% of women working outside the home is a sensible or sustainable percentage. But like Joe Matt, I just think the prostitution is morally wrong. And that's certainly what I always said to Chester. You can't believe that prostitution is harmless or even worse, beneficial. He definitely did. I would put in mail articles to him about prostitution when they appeared in the National Post, pro and con, because I wanted to help him with his research. What he did with it was up to him. And I try to hold those kinds of views where it's like, if this is something that I vehemently disagree with, but I think it's something that some other creator is looking for to assist them, then I think I'm morally obligated to provide that information to them and not say, well, I disagree with this, so I'm not going to enable this kind of thinking. And I would also point out that I think that a world where there's a more sensible percentage of women who are wives and mothers and homemakers, and a sensible percentage of women who are out in the workforce is way, way, way out of whack. But that's something that women have to decide. I would never say, yes, I need to be made dictator, or me and people who think like me need to be made dictator, and we're going to tell women what the balance is going to be. It's no, I think it's a matter of we're going further and further along towards 100% of women out in the workforce and no wife, mother, homemakers. I think long before we get to that, we're going to hit God's guardrail, and something will need to be done. But definitely, I want to emphasize that I'm not saying I or other men are going to decide what the balance is going to be. It will be women who decide what that balance is going to be, and how you decide which women are in one camp and which women are in the other camp, because immigration is just hitting a wall. We have to get back to getting Canada's birth rate above what it is now. I was just reading the other day, like 1.2 or something like that, where replacement is 2.1. The two thing is that Chester is definitely one of the most, if not the most unique whoremongers on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. I infer from the reviews and commentaries on Paying for It that people sent to me that Chester is continuing in his relationship, or quotation mark relationship, unquote, or capital R relationship with his favorite prostitute, and that they have now become virtually an old, settled, married couple. I know at the time that Chester and I were hanging out that she would bake him cookies for Christmas, so it isn't a completely one-sided thing. Personally, I wouldn't want to be wanting to defend that on Judgment Day, but I'll be very interested to see how that does, quote, shake out, unquote, on Judgment Day. And I can certainly admire Chester for his advocacy, as I understand it, that if more men treated prostitutes the way they do a girlfriend or a wife that they cherish, as Chester definitely cherished and cherishes his favorite prostitute, the world in general and the world of prostitution specifically would probably be improved or be made less unhappy. Not necessarily the same thing. I don't agree, and as far as I know, Joe Matt doesn't agree. But there you go. The only thing that I would add to that is happening now, definitely the Supreme Court of Canada has established that prostitution is just a profession, that prostitutes are sex care workers, and consequently consequently are entitled to the same protections that any kind of worker or laborer is entitled to, and consequently all legislation has to take shape around that. What has changed since that time is the people who are very aware of and very knowledgeable about human trafficking, that not most prostitutes, but a good number of prostitutes are trafficked human beings, which means now you're talking about the slave trade. They can appear to be a strong, independent woman with very distinct ideas about prostitution and how that applies in their life. Online, if you're clicking on their profile or visiting them at OnlyFans or one of those websites, but there is a sizable environment where they're portraying themselves that way. But that's not who they actually are. They're trafficked human beings, and you are basically taking advantage of someone who is in a slave relationship to another person who treats them abusively, and all along the point from where they were born to where they were trafficked as a human being, there's a whole supply chain where grisly, nightmarish things happen to these women. And to try and say, oh, well, that's not my responsibility. This was just, an OnlyFans woman who was also turning tricks, and I set up a date with her. My hands are clean on this. No, if you look at these profiles, if you look at what these women have actually gone through before somebody got to the point of going, oh, this person needs rescuing, and they did get rescued, and the person who trafficked them was arrested and charged and sentenced. That's even more over in the direction of, I just can't endorse this. I can accept that Chester says, no, that's a side issue or a minor concern. I don't think it is.
Well, it's the old, I remember reading Groucho Marx's biography, and he talked about, he frequented whorehouses back when he was younger, and he was an advocate of, we need to legalize it because it's better for the girls, it's better for the Johns. But at the same time, it's like, Groucho, you had a wife at home.
You had what?
He had a wife at home.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And it's like, he was already, way down on the slippery slope, where it's like I say, when I'm trying to have an intelligent discussion about these things, it's like, thou shalt not commit adultery is one of the 10 commandments. The further away you get from treating it as a 10 commandment, as for the same reason that you don't murder people, you don't cheat on your wife, the further away you get from that, it's like all of these other things are just implications of what's already a disastrous implication. Yeah, good point on Groucho and talking about the whorehouses and paying black housekeepers in hotels to have sex because you could have them for whatever it was, because they were just a step above, a small step above absolute slaves. I think we have to make lots of progress on all aspects of this Chester looks at it as it just needs some tweaking, and obviously Groucho thought, no, this is fine behavior. We just have to make it safer all the way around.